Hi everyone, welcome to Ask a Property Manager episode number 76. Today is June 23rd, 2021. We're coming to you from Studio 2.0 here at Own Buffalo, and I'm Andrew Schultz, Principal Broker of Own Buffalo, Inc. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a possible extension of the federal eviction moratorium. We're going to talk about how to choose and pay a contractor on a larger project. We'll answer some questions from housing providers around the country and so much more. Before we jump into all that, we're going to go ahead and plug our social media. New episodes of Ask a Property Manager drop every Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can catch those on Facebook Live. You can also catch the replay on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube. Don't forget about our Instagram. We post things there that don't make it to our other two social media outlets. And last but not least, don't forget about the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. The current episode is talking about how to keep tenants happy during renovation work, who's technically responsible for the keys to the rental property, and having sympathy for tenants. Where do you draw the line? So don't miss out on that episode. New episodes drop every other Thursday, so there'll be a new episode next Thursday. But you can pick this episode up at rentprep.com/podcast or anywhere podcasts are heard. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our news of the day here. We've got a couple of interesting articles. We're going to start with this one out of CNBC. This was published yesterday evening. U.S. is expected to extend the CDC residential eviction ban by 1 month, sources say. We'll go ahead and jump in here. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, COVID-19 residential eviction moratorium is set to expire on June 30th, is expected to be extended by another month, sources briefed on the matter told Reuters. An announcement could come as early as Wednesday, the sources said. That would be today. The national ban on residential evictions was first implemented last September and was extended in March until June 30th. The White House and the CDC did not issue comment. On Tuesday, a group of 44 U.S. lawmakers urged the extension, citing an estimate from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that about 6 million renter households are behind on their rent and at risk for eviction. The letter to the CDC and Biden, signed by Democrat lawmakers Ayanna Pressley, Jimmy Gomez, Cori Bush, AOC, Carolyn B. Maloney, and others, warned that without an extension, millions of renters will once again face the threat of eviction. The Supreme Court has yet to act on the petition by the landlord groups that argued that the CDC exceeded its authority when it halted evictions to help renters during the pandemic. The CDC imposed the ban to help combat the spread of COVID-19 and prevent homelessness during the pandemic. The landlord said that property owners have been losing over $13 billion every month under the moratorium. One group estimated that 40 million Americans were behind on rent in January, with $70 billion of missed payments by the end of 2020. The moratorium covers renters who expected to earn less than $99,000 a year, or $198 for joint filers, or who reported no income, or who received stimulus checks. There's a couple things I highlighted here. Obviously, at the top, we highlighted the fact that they're talking about extending this for another month, which would take us to the end of July. The other thing I highlighted here is that the Supreme Court has yet to act on the petition by the landlord groups that had filed and successfully won their cases, stating that the eviction moratorium was unconstitutional. If you might recall from a couple episodes back, we had talked about there being more than one state. Let me jump back to my screen here. We had talked about there being more than one state in which there had been cases brought to court and successfully battled, stating that this moratorium is not legal, it's unconstitutional. And it has been sent to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court seems to be dragging their feet as opposed to actually dealing with the issue and actually hearing the case, which is kind of what I suspected was going to happen. The wheels of justice turn very, very, very slowly in Washington. So I kind of suspected that this is what we were going to wind up dealing with, but it is kind of frustrating to see that they're just blatantly ignoring the situation and continuing to just push forward onto another month of this. And it's definitely having an impact on the smaller landlords out there. So I hope that they come to their senses and realize that this has to stop. Let's go ahead and jump into our next article here. This one is a little bit more local flair. New Mckinley Mall owner. I'm going to be doing what I've been doing for 20 years, trying to re-tenant malls. So for those of you outside the Buffalo market, the Mckinley Mall is actually an older, it's an older mall. It's a primarily indoor mall that is situated just south of Buffalo in Orchard Park. And it's a property that is very distressed at this point. We're going to go ahead and get into the article. Essentially what's happening is the property is being purchased by a new owner, which is great news for our local economy. The new owner of the Mckinley Mall says he will do his best to bring the mall back to a semblance of its former glory. Mike Cohen, whose legal name is Miran Kohansi, I'm pretty sure I butchered that one, I apologize, of Kohan Retail Investment Group, confirmed to Business First that he signed a sales agreement to buy the Mckinley Mall for $8.5 million. The sale of the property, which has been in the foreclosure process since 2018, still needs approval from the state Supreme Court. Basically, I'm going to be doing what I've been doing for 20 years, trying to reinvent or re-tenant malls to the best of our ability, he said. Hamburg supervisor, it's in Hamburg, not Orchard Park, my mistake. Hamburg supervisor Jim Shaw has voiced concerns over not knowing what the new owner intends to do with the mall. As of this morning, he had not spoken with Kohan. Kohan said that he is open to ideas and that he's had success at other locations with uses such as call centers and entertainment attractions. Kohan Retail Investment Group owns more than 40 shopping centers, according to its website. For example, he said, a call center with 200 employees means more people potentially having lunch at a mall food court or walking around and shopping. He wants to help merchants who previously didn't have the opportunity for a mall space, as well as hold events at the Mckinley Mall. Cohen said he hasn't been to the Hamburg Mall recently, but said he is familiar with the site and has been there in the past. When news of the sale broke, concerns also surfaced over unpaid utility bills and taxes at other Cohen properties, such as the former Chapel Hill Mall in Akron, Ohio. A new owner, which purchased that mall after foreclosure in March, will convert the space into a business park, according to the Akron Beacon Journal. Sometimes malls are beyond fixing, he said, but you can't always tell if a property will be a success story until you get involved. He sees big pluses in the McKinley Mall, though. It's on McKinley Parkway, a highly visible, high-traffic road, and it has multiple tenants with outside entrances. Any other concerns, I'd be more than glad to hear it, because obviously we are newcomers and don't know much about the issues the mall has had, he told Business First. I'd be more than glad to address them one by one as we take over. So I did quick highlight something here. A call center with 200 employees means more people potentially having lunch at a mall food court or walking around and shopping. This is actually a really interesting line, and it sparked something as I was reading through the article here, talking about how malls have been reinvented over the course of time. And this particular line reminded me of the mall in Buffalo, Main Place Mall in Buffalo, which is on Main Street in the city. And over the course of time, the mall just slowly lost tenants and this and that and the other thing. Well, they kind of reinvented the mall by turning it into, I don't believe there's any call centers there, but there is kind of a data center. I know there's a couple of different data centers in there now that obviously data centers have to have employees, which, you know, you may not be getting traditional retail tenants, but you are getting tenants. That particular building just happened to be kind of situated at the right place at the right time, where there was a large band of essentially dark fiber sitting there for use, and they found that putting a data center in there was an excellent reuse of that building, whereby, you know, a mall just wasn't actually feasible at that point. So I think they do still have a couple of places in the food court there to help service some of the other stores and other businesses that are in the mall now, but it's certainly very, very vastly different than what you would think of when you walk through a traditional mall. So just something to keep in mind. There are options out there when it comes to redoing malls and finding unique ways to rehab properties and finding new and unique ways to use properties. Lots of options out there, and I think we're going to see a lot of that as things progress here in Western New York. Let's go ahead and take a look at something funny. If this is how you're capping your chimney, folks, or if this is how your mason capped your chimney, number one, you need a new mason, and number two, you're probably going to be on your way to the hospital. Obviously, this is not how you want to cap a chimney, because there's no way for any of the carbon monoxide gas to get out. Yeah, just a real winner of a job there. So hopefully that's not the finished product. Hopefully they get that fixed. Based on what I see, this company has done a very thorough job. Centaur Exterminators out of New York. I laughed pretty hard when I saw this. I'd never heard of the company. Obviously, it looks to be like some sort of a local company or something like that. But hey, man, if you're not seeing any Centaurs, then yeah, I would say they've done a very, very thorough job. So that was kind of funny. I appreciated that one. We're going to go ahead and jump into our questions from housing providers around the country, starting with this one on choosing and paying a contractor. I have a question about the payment to the roof company. I'm replacing my roof and I just got a couple of quotes. How do you make payment to the roofing company? Cash, check, debit card, or credit card? One of the roofers said he only accepts cash or check and that he allows for payment plans. My concern is, what if the roofer takes the check and disappears? How can I get my money back? What should I do to make sure that he will do the work? Thank you in advance. So it is normal to pay a deposit on larger projects such as a roof or a big renovation or something along those lines. You know, if you're doing a big renovation, it might be an onset payment, some step payments in the middle, and then a final payment at completion. For a roof, I would anticipate there being some sort of a deposit payment and then the rest due on completion. Keep in mind the cost of materials right now and the fact that everybody is trying to get work done. So if you want to get on the calendar of a roofer or really any contractor, you're likely going to be paying a deposit of some amount at this point. Most vendors are booked out for a substantial amount of time, and they want to book business for people who are serious about getting work done, so they're going to start requiring deposits in order to get on their calendar and get your work booked. So going back to what I was saying about the cost of building materials and stuff like that, when you're talking about the amount of roofing materials and stuff needed to do a roof, it's not uncommon for a roofer to request some amount of money as a down payment. As far as how much to put down, that's going to be a negotiation between you and the roofer. I would shoot for 25% down. They may require a third or something along those lines. I would try not to get anywhere near half. If you can keep it in that 25 to 33% down range, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable, especially if it's a vendor that I hadn't used in the past. You know, that limits your risk. Is if they did disappear, it kind of limits the amount of money that they're able to walk away from. The less that you have to put out at the onset, the better off you are. So that would be my recommendation as far as making the down payment. Different companies are going to accept different payment methods. So, you know, if one guy only accepts cash or check and doesn't accept debit card or credit card, honestly, think about the fact that if he takes a debit card or a credit card, he's paying a 2.5% to 3% fee right off the top. So if you're doing a $10,000 roof, he's going to lose, let me do the math here, at 3%, he's losing $300 right off the bat just for accepting that credit card payment. So that's something to keep in mind, is there are fees for accepting, you know, payment forms outside of cash or check. Certified check, money order, something like that would also be acceptable there. I would avoid paying anybody cash. I would want something to show that they had actually received that payment. Cash is just not a good way of doing business for the most part. So that would be my recommendation. The bottom line here is, if you're not comfortable handing somebody a check to get on their calendar, to get the work booked, to get squared away and get the books and get the roof started, you got to find a different contractor, because there's something that contractor has said or done that has made you feel uncomfortable with their process. And, you know, there's a reason that you have a level of discomfort. So it might just be a situation where you need to find a different contractor that does make you feel a little bit more comfortable with the situation at hand. A couple of other things that you can do: make sure that you check for proper licensing and check for proper insurance, both general liability, workers' compensation, and disability, because if one of their guys falls off the roof, you don't want to be responsible for that person's medical bills. As far as the licensing goes, some municipalities don't require licensing for roofing. I would say that that's probably not many at this point. I would say most are probably going to require that license for roofing. Most municipalities are also going to require a permit before you do a roof. Make sure you get a copy of that permit before you start. And then that way you know that, okay, well, if they pulled a permit, they at least went to the town, and the town probably checked for their license and their insurances and stuff like that. It's just one more fail-safe to make sure that you get a copy of the permit before they start. Honestly, if you're not sure if licensing or permitting is required, just call your town and they can tell you. Just talk to the building permit department and they can tell you exactly what's required for whatever type of project it is that you're looking to go into. The bottom line here is, if somebody is to steal your money, it's time to take them to court. At the end of the day, that's the only real recourse that you're going to have if somebody actually walks off with your money, is to take them to court. Just make sure that you are limiting your risk on the front end so that hopefully it doesn't become quite as big of an issue on the back end. On to question number 2, is this a bedroom? We bought a house and have an extra room. We can't decide whether to make it a dining room or a bedroom. The kitchen is kind of small, but I don't know if an extra bedroom would bring in more interest. The house has 2 bedrooms already. So my first thought is, does it meet the qualifications to be a bedroom? So you have to check occupancy standards first and foremost. An extra bedroom is almost always going to be more useful than a dining room would be. And honestly, if the space is flexible, you might want to market it as an office / bedroom / dining room, whatever makes the most sense for the tenant. Ultimately, the tenant's going to use the space however they see fit regardless. Once they move in, you know, if they think that dining room or office would make a good third bedroom, they're probably going to use it as a third bedroom anyway. You'll know how many people are moving in, hopefully know how many people are moving in based off the rental application. So you might be able to figure out, okay, they're probably going to use that as a third bedroom just based off of the rental application. So as far as what constitutes a bedroom, bedrooms do not need closets. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to have a closet in a bedroom. Certainly makes it a lot more marketable, certainly makes it a lot more usable, but if you have a small room and you're already tight on space, you don't necessarily need that closet. You do need to have windows of the proper size, and you can check the occupancy standards to see what size windows you need. You also need 2 exits, one being the door, the other can be a window. The window would count as an exit, as well as proper heating and proper ceiling height. Those are the requirements for a bedroom. There's no requirement about there being a closet or anything along those lines. And I believe the minimum square footage is 70 square foot, but you can verify that by doing a little bit of research. One thing that you might want to keep in mind is that if you're on a septic system, you may not be rated for more than 2 bedrooms, because that's typically how we see septic systems rated, is by bedroom. If you are adding bedrooms and not making changes to your septic, you might wind up with some issues down the road with your septic system. So that's something you might want to keep in mind as well. Talk to your town if you have any questions, but keep in mind that as you start asking questions, the town might start asking questions too, and you may not want to answer their questions. So, definitely do some research, find out from the resources that are available to you what the best possible scenario is. If you can use the room as a bedroom, my recommendation would be market it as a bedroom/office or something along those lines to give people the option. And then take it from there. Just make sure that whatever you do, you are doing it in compliance with whatever state, local, and federal laws you have in place. Make sure you have your smoke and CO detectors in place as necessary and things of that nature. That's something that we forget quite a bit when we decide, oh, this is just going to be a bedroom now. So keep that in mind. It's one of those things that could save a life. Moving out just one tenant. This is our third and final question of the day. I had 2 tenants move in back in 2019. Recently they broke up and one tenant has moved out and needs to be removed from the lease. I've attempted to get a hold of them to sign an amendment to remove him from the lease, but neither I nor the remaining tenant has been successful. Their lease is ending at the end of June and the remaining tenant wants to stay, and I've agreed to that, but on a month-to-month basis for the time being. What do you think the best course of action is? Should I draft up an entirely new lease with just the remaining tenant on it, or should I do an extension of the original lease and state that the other tenant is being removed? Since the original lease is expiring, I don't think I would need his signature for an extension. I'm curious for everyone's thoughts. So the first thing I would do before signing any new lease would be have the remaining party reapply and make sure that they still meet your criteria for renting the apartment. You had 2 people living in the place before, which probably means that you had 2 incomes coming into the property. If you only have 1 income coming in now, you need to make sure that they still meet your income requirements as well as whatever other credit and background check guidelines and things like that you have in place. This is a good opportunity for you to refresh your file on this tenant, make sure that you have good emergency contacts and all that, and essentially just make sure that everything is as it seems. So that would be my first move, would be re-verify the existing tenant to make sure that they still qualify for the property. If they don't qualify for the property, it's time for them to move too. Unfortunately, as it may be, if they don't qualify, they're going to have to move so that you can get a qualified tenant in there. As far as a new lease goes, my recommendation would be, since you don't have the other party's cooperation and you do have a security deposit that is going to be due back to the both of them, I would essentially process this as a full move out and then a move in. Do a move out the way that you normally would, deduct for any damages that you're able to find during that move out inspection, and then send the remainder of the security deposit to both people on a 2-party check. It's up to them at that point to figure out how to cash it. That's not your problem. Have the new, or the person that's staying, have that person pay a new security deposit and sign a new month-to-month lease. That way there's no connection between the old lease and the new lease. The new lease is strictly for the one person who's staying, and the other person has been completely removed from the process. The security deposit has been settled out, and that's between the 2 tenants to figure out how they're going to get that check cashed and how they're going to split it up. So that's off of your plate and not your concern. And then you have your tenant, they have a new lease on a month-to-month basis, you have a fresh security deposit, and you are good to go. Two other things that I would recommend is, number one, make sure you change your locks, because obviously that other tenant more than likely still has a key and you don't want that. So you might want to consider changing the locks. I would change them between every tenancy anyway. This is a change in tenancy. It would make sense to change the locks. And the other thing I would mention is make sure that you take plenty of photos. Do your move-in, move-out photos the same as you would if you were doing a traditional move-out. Obviously, the other person's still going to have all of their stuff there, but at least you can get a very thorough inspection of what the property looks like at the time that they are starting that new lease with that fresh deposit, and you know that any damages caused beyond that point are as a result of the new tenancy. So that's how I would handle it. That's probably the cleanest way that you can handle the situation. It's a little bit more paperwork on your end, unfortunately, but I think that ultimately having that clean break from the previous occupant and knowing that the only occupant on the lease going forward is just your one tenant, I think is going to make your life a lot easier in the long run. So that pretty much wraps things up for this week's episode of Ask a Property Manager. Thank you all so much for watching. We truly do appreciate it. We love producing Ask a Property Manager, and you can help us to improve by dropping a question in the comments either on Facebook or on YouTube, and your question may be picked up and answered in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed this content, or if we brought some value to your day, do us a favor and hit that thumbs up button. YouTube and Facebook both push videos based on community feedback, so every like, comment, subscribe, and share helps us to grow and reach more people. We'll be back next week on June 30th. That's next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern with another show you won't want to miss. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.